Today I just want to recap a bit on my preparation for Torah portion called Mishpatim. Now, Mishpatim means judgments. Now, judgments in a sense is a negative connotation that's associated with the law. In the Hebrew, law is Torah. That means instructions or directions. It's giving you direction and instruct you which way to go, so you can find the end destination, which is salvation, which is also a person, which is Yahweh. So salvation is not about being covered, being safe, being protected, being healed. That's just the blessings that follow the fact that you are in covenant with Yahweh. Salvation is only described as an end goal experience, which is a place, which is the elevated state, the restored garden or the promised land or the new Jerusalem, as well as the presence. In Genesis 15, Yahweh said, I am your exceedingly great reward. You get me. So his presence is what salvation is. And when you follow the Messiah, the Savior, that's the closest you can experience what salvation is in this point in time. So the idea is to walk with the Savior, and you will end up at the place called salvation. So it's important for us to know how to walk with the Savior. Now, the Savior's name we're going to look at in this Torah portion related to the bondwoman. Now, the bondwoman is related to the bondservant. The bondservant is the second commandment given after the 10 words. And the bondservant describes the personal adoption into the household. And we're going to look at all of that in detail. The bondwoman is the collective made up of multiple bondservants that depicts a body or a bride. So those two concepts we will look at. The bondwoman is a passage we can look at it in Leviticus. I think it's Leviticus 9, if I remember it correctly. And also the story from the prophet Hosea. And Hosea is the same as Yeshua without the yod. And Hosea means savior and safety, which is a distant concept. I know the Savior, I know their safety. But Yeshua is, Yahweh is my salvation. It's personal, and it's connected to the bigger picture, which is connected to the bride, which is Israel, not to the individual. Now, the individual experience salvation and safety as they walk in the footsteps of the Savior. But ultimately, you will be restored back as the bride of Yahweh, which is Israel, which is depicted by the bondwoman. So that's just a bit of foreknowledge into entering into this parasha and describing that. Now, why is this important? Yet again, context. What happened before? Who are the people? And where are they going? So what happened before? They left Egypt, were under slavery of the slave master Pharaoh. There was 10 plagues. There were 10 plagues, and they were released, and the instigation of unleavened bread and Passover was set in motion. And then they left. We crossed through the Red Sea, and that's where Egyptians were destroyed from their point of view, and they were never being attacked by the Egyptians again, which is a picture of the Nachash, the Hasatan, that doesn't have power over us anymore. And then they had the second enemy, the Amalek, which is the self, the flesh, the hardness of the heart that you need to overcome. Now, coming through the two battles, the Red Sea experience and the 10 plagues, they arrived at the mountain and they heard these 10 words and they were terrified. All of that happened. Next point in time is this parasha, where they hear the Mishpatim. The Mishpatim of the bondservant. And the concept of adoption into the household. To become a a free man by choice, serving the master and becoming a son in the master's house. So that is the revelation of entering the household, or what it means to enter the household of Elohim. Now, for us who come in from bondage, entering the household, there's a lot of passages that tell us about how we do that, and that's through the work of the Spirit and the receiving of the Spirit and the writing of the 10 words or the commandments on our hearts, and that change your nature. So the same principle you can overlay with that storyline. And continuing on, they now need to get a concept of, I am saved as an individual, but we are saved as a people, because the nation of Israel had been born during this process of turmoil. Now, for those who've been at a birth of one of their children, you will know it's just like the 10 plagues, and a lot of angst and anxiety and things happening, and it's a very unpleasant situation to go through, but the end result is peace, love, and tranquility and happiness after the child is born. So we need to go through that birth process in order to be born into something. Now, on a personal level, we get born again. That's not really a traumatic experience, but as you engage into Yahweh's kingdom, there are birth processes that you will go through, of which the last one will be the last birth, which is the process called the Great Tribulation, preceded by the birth pains as depicted by Matthew 24. And I think if we're not there yet, we are very close in the time of the birth pains, and we are very close to going into the major contractions of the birth, which is a 3.5 period, where the birth of the bride, the fullness of the bride, the second part of the marriage will be concluded, where we will enter into salvation, enter into the presence of Yahweh, enter into his house, being restored back as a bride and restored back as a people into the household of Yahweh. So that's just a few thoughts in an overview of what we're going to discuss, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow when we do the Torah portion, Mishpatim. Shalom.